Welcome into episode 319 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget and Scott, the Bruins season has finally come to an end at the hands of the Florida Panthers, 2-1 in Game 6 at TD Garden. The Panthers were the favorite in the series. The Bruins were able to extend it. With a win, you force Game 7, anything can happen. Florida did what all good teams do, and they eventually get that fourth win, and they move on, rightfully so, to the conference finals. Let's get right into the opening shifts and break this one down and see where the Bruins go from here.
Yeah, so I'll start. It just had so many similarities to last year's exit game. Losing to the Florida Panthers on home ice. You had a lead late, or you had a lead, you give up a goal late. And instead of last year, the late goal sent it to overtime. Well, this time it was the second goal for the 2-1 win for Florida. And it just brings up how hard it's been for them to win on home ice. It would have they win both their games against Florida on the road. They come back to Boston, they get Marchand back, and they hope that they can force a Game 7. But that did not happen. It felt like they had a really strong start to the game and a lot of really good chances to extend the lead, but on odd man rushes, they just were not able to finish plays, and for that reason, they weren't able to score enough in the series, and they weren't able to get past Florida.
For me, I think, again, we want to break this one down from start to finish, where the Bruins go from here, but I just want to take a step back, and my opening shift is quite simply this. This Bruins group, I think, reached their ceiling, and good on them for doing that. I think this roster was limited from the get-go. Obviously, when the Panthers ended the Bruins season last year, we knew a lot of changes were happening, and just based on the roster on paper, you hate to say that a team can't accomplish something before a season begins, right? A team can't win a Stanley Cup. Look at their roster, but because anything can happen in sports, okay? But ultimately, this team lacked offensive firepower and scoring, and we knew that back in October. They were able to string together a very, very commendable regular season, and they were able to translate that into a first-round victory in the playoffs, which they couldn't do last year. But ultimately, you lose in the second round, which I think was their ceiling, was winning one round. Most teams can't say at the end of a year that they actually reached their ceiling. And, the Bruins scored 2 goals or fewer in 8 of their final 9 playoff games. That's not a winning recipe, and that's kind of what we feared back in October and the summer was going to be their Achilles heel, which was they just aren't going to have enough firepower to score enough. So, again, I think they exceeded most people's expectations, as Brad Marchand said after the game. A lot of people wrote them off to not even make the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, good on them for getting as far as they did with what they had to work with.
Yeah, and that ties a little bit into my opening shift, which is looking ahead, which we will do as this episode goes on. I think Don Sweeney's offseason priorities are clear. 1, lock up Jeremy Swayman, who is a pending restricted free agent. He took the number 1 goalie job and ran with it. He deserves to be paid as such. Don't mess around. Last year they had to mess around in part because of their cap situation. They had to play hardball with him. Don't do that again. You got to pay him. He's your guy. He proved that this postseason. Priority number 2, improve the offense, preferably at the center position, because I think you saw in this postseason that they do still clearly lack a true number 1 center. They have a couple good number 2 threes, but the vast majority of Stanley Cup teams have a clear number 1 center. The Florida Panthers had Alexander Barkov, who you could not match. So finding that or finding help elsewhere, upgrading on the wing. Clearly, this team needs more offensive firepower. As Brian said, 2 goals or fewer in 8 of their last 9 playoff games. It's just, you're just not going to get far with that. And there are times this season where they overachieved and their offense looked pretty good, and the overall numbers were pretty good on the season, but ultimately that was a concern going back to training camp, and it showed up in the playoffs. Guys who had been able to step up in the regular season kind of found their level in the playoffs, and you realize, like, okay, that, Coyle and Zaka aren't number one centers. Other guys on this roster are, a little limited in what they're going to be able to contribute. You didn't have enough support for Pastrnak, who, obviously had too quiet of a postseason himself, but there weren't enough guys who could help pick up the slack and help him out.
Yeah, and that'll definitely lead us to some other conversation about who was helpful in the postseason that you maybe want to bring back. And then guys that are, they're free agents, and we may have seen them play their last game as a Bruin on Friday night. So plenty of unrestricted free agents, and then Swayman, a restricted free agent. But yeah, I don't know where you guys want to start first, because I feel like maybe we should go over the loss, actual game, what went wrong in the series and what went wrong in game 6. And obviously Marchand came back. That was a huge storyline going into the game. He told media after the game that he pushed to get back as quickly as possible. Told the doctors he wasn't going to sit out the third period, but in game 3, but it wasn't his decision. Got placed in concussion protocol. So he confirmed that that's what was going on with his injury, and then just kept telling them he was ready to go back. But he said he wasn't being completely honest with them about how he was feeling, because he just wanted to get into the lineup as fast as possible. So not exactly sure what that means in terms of what he was hiding and covering from medical, that he that he was telling them he was doing just fine and he wasn't. But he did end up playing 20 minutes in game 6, and he looked back to himself, and he said that it's all part of the sacrifice of wanting to be in the playoffs and wanting to be out there with your team. Sometimes you play through stuff like that.
Yeah, I thought he had a great game. I think that he was a Gustav Forsling skate blade away from having a tap-in goal there in the second period, which that play, you want to pull your hair out telling Pastrnak to shoot that, or how does that play not result in a scoring chance? But I think he did make the right play. I think Forsling got a little fortunate with that. But besides that near goal, I thought he played strong. He was battling. Scott, I don't know if you had any in-depth analysis on Marchand's game, but I thought he looked good.
Yeah, I thought he, even mixed up physically, which normally you worry about someone coming back from a concussion. Are they going to play a little tentative? I actually don't worry about that with Marchand. If anything, my concern would go the other way, where it's like he's not going to protect himself enough, which his comments after the game only add to that. Obviously, he, is trying to fib his way back into the lineup. I read that as like, obviously he's telling them, like, I feel fine, I'm ready to play. Ultimately, the way concussion protocol works is there's still just baseline tests you have to pass. And that's not, hey, how are you feeling? Or, hey, think you're ready to play? Like, no, there's actually like hard neurological tests that guys have to go through. So even if Marchand says, I feel fine, or he lies a little about how he feels, like, ultimately the tests show what the tests show. And so he got cleared because he eventually passed those tests. Before people get off thinking like he lied his way back into the lineup. Like, on modern concussion testing, you can only go so far with trying to lie your way out of it.
You used to be able to. I mean, I had to go through it one time when I was in high school, and you could pass that so easy. It used to be just like, I don't know, but it's not that easy anymore. And I'm sure it's not at the NHL level.
Yeah, but yeah, I thought he played well, and Brian, I'm with you. Like, I actually do think Pastrnak made the right play. Usually he's very good at at slipping passes like that through the skates, and it would have been an easy tap and goal had it gotten through. And either Forsling gets lucky, or Pastrnak just doesn't quite execute the pass right. You know, one of the many easy what ifs from this game, but yeah, and I thought I said off the top, like, Pastrnak was too quiet this postseason, and that's obviously true. Just the raw numbers of it, right? 4 goals, 4 assists in 13 games. You expect more than that from him. I thought he was dangerous in this game. It didn't end up resulting in any points, but I did think he created a lot of chances. He had 5 shots on goal and 7 other attempts. Had some setups, so it's a frustrating story for the Bruins in the end, just because of the lack of goals. And to a certain extent, that's talent, but it's also not burying chances when they were there. You go back to game, I think it was game 4, where they had the 3 breakaways in the second period and couldn't score. And that was kind of a theme throughout the series, where they couldn't score on breakaways and odd man rushes. And like, they actually figured out how to get really good chances against Florida. They broke out. They got better breaking out against their pressure, and were able to end up with odd man rushes as a result. And you would hope that then translates to more offense, and it just didn't quite get there for this team. So that ends up being a really frustrating story. And as Jim Montgomery said after the game, you can't win every game 2-1.
No, you can't. And yeah, we talk about how ultimately it's the Bruins' lack of offense and their lack of playmakers and finishers on this roster that amount to them not scoring enough goals in the playoffs. But you're right; it's actually one of the best goal scorers in the world that had a chance on a breakaway to put you up 2-0. And yeah, Pastrnak was out. He was off offensively a lot of the postseason. I think the Game 7 overtime goal was rightfully a massive goal in his career, a staple goal in his career. That's huge. But aside from that, yeah, it was a pretty quiet postseason for him. But again, Bridget, you mentioned it off the top. The Bruins definitely came out on their toes in this game. I think that they were the better team to start. I think that the Lundell goal to tie the game after the Bruins had a chance to extend the lead a few times, it was a backbreaker, definitely. But I didn't have the feeling I had in past games where Florida scores and I was like, oh well, now the Bruins they're gonna collapse. Like I still thought the Bruins were playing well, and even that goal that Forsling scored, the Bruins are back. They're trying to do the right things. DeBrusk makes the block. Frederick's back in coverage. Wotherspoon, he just got the puck hit off his stick, but it was kind of a scramble. Like, and then Swayman, it happens quick. I'm sure he didn't love it going in, but it happens quick. So it wasn't like a goal where I thought, oh, the Bruins are just out to lunch. Like they were back in coverage. They just lost a hockey battle. But that third period, your season's on the line, and I just thought that, I don't know if the Bruins felt the magnitude of the moment, if the game was catching up to them, if Florida was catching their stride. But it seemed like no disrespect to Florida, because I think that they played on their toes in the third period and they deserved, I thought, a lot of the territorial advantage. But I think a lot of it was also the Bruins just handing them pucks and tripping over themselves, and they stopped making plays. How many icings did the Bruins have? It's just they stopped attacking the game, and they just reverted back to defending. And I said to myself, look, if Florida scores a goal in this period to win the game, I'm not going to be surprised, because the Bruins, like, they're not grabbing the bull by the horns. Like, they're allowing Florida to take it to them. And Florida was just like, all right, if you guys are going to stumble over yourselves and ice the puck and give us ozone faceoffs and not make passes, yeah, we will capitalize. And eventually it was who I thought was the best defenseman in this series, start to finish, Gustav Forsling, who was able to get the series winner.
Yeah, only a minute 33 left. And I don't know what you guys thought of it, but I feel like that maybe was Swayman's weakest goal. He gave up the whole playoffs. couldn't control the rebound.
May have been screened by Wotherspoon. He may have been screened by Wotherspoon.
The puck ended up going directly between Wotherspoon's legs. So yeah, that definitely made it harder. It's like, okay, if Wotherspoon's leg, like if it hits him in the shin, obviously that's no goal. We're probably going to overtime. If Swayman sees it cleanly, yes, but it's one that you definitely want back if you're Swayman. And he had such a great postseason. I just know that that's one that's going to bother him because the magnitude of it, and also the timing of it, and it just snuck short side. And he may have been able to control that rebound that led to the second chance as well.
Yeah, that's what he said after. He said he didn't see the release on Forsling's shot, but he thinks he should have done a better job with the initial rebound. He also, like, whether he could see Forsling's shot or not, he pretty clearly, like, wasn't able to get reset. He was still, like, kind of moving. He was sort of down, like, so you end up with a hole there. Yeah, I think it's definitely one he wants back. But, again, because the Bruins offense was so inept, like, you're demanding perfection from him. And for much of these playoffs, he was pretty damn close to perfect. So, I'm not going to get on Swayman at all. And doesn't seem like many Bruins fans are. We heard in the Garden after the handshake line, one last Swayman chant from the fans who were left, which Swayman said, brought him to tears. He said it was a great moment. He really appreciated it. He called Boston home. So yeah, and sure, Florida's first goal too. Good shot, like you said, a quick play, but savable. It wasn't a snipe; it was low glove. But again, like, we're nitpicking that because the Bruins needed him to be perfect. Like, if they were going to win that in regulation, they had to win it 1-0.
Yeah,
at the very least, like, you're getting to overtime 1-1.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Jeremy Swayman played so well, did so much for his teammates throughout this entire postseason. I can never say a word about him or a goal he gave up. The Bruins aren't even close to this position. They're not even in these games if it's not for him. So, and again, like, I do think that there was a moving screen on that. If Wotherspoon's not in his way, he sees that clean, it's not going in. So,
but I just think he was not fully in position sealing the post yet. Like Scott said, he hadn't fully gotten across.
I mean, even if it was the worst goal of all time, okay, he gave up one bad goal. I'm not gonna get.
I agree with you on that. There's no way you could bring this back to Swayman as the reason why this game was lost, the reason why this series was lost. It's not on him, and the crowd that stuck around did give him, the Swayman chant. They had a "Let's Go Bruins" chant going when the guys were leaving the ice. They just wanted to thank the team for the season. So there were certain fans that got out of there immediately, but then there were other fans who stuck around to kind of give a little bit of a cheer for the guys.
And I want to give Bruins fans some credit here, because while I will say most people probably shit on Bruins fans because I guess after all 3 games in Boston, there was some form of debris on the ice. So that's not good. But as far as recognizing the players, Bruins fans, they really are, I think, intelligent fans. I think they're among the most intelligent fans in hockey. And they know a team who just wasn't good enough. And they accept that. Like, oftentimes you see a Bruins season come to a heartbreaking end because they had sky high expectations, and the Bruins fans, they'll sit, if the Bruins lose, they'll sit there stunned, they'll sit there disgusted, and rightfully so. I mean, last year against Florida, inexcusable when you really go back and look at that series and how they were up in the series and up in the closeout games. But when's the last time you see a Bruins fan base cheer a goalie off the ice when the Bruins lost a series? When's the last time you saw the Bruins fan base emphatically chant "Let's go Bruins" after losing their season on home ice with a minute and a half left to go in the game. Like, this Bruins fan base recognized this team. They gave it their all. The stat line might not look good as far as getting outshot, outpossessed. That's because Florida was better. We said it all along. But it wasn't because the Bruins weren't trying. It's because they were probably outcoached at times and they were out talented. But the Bruins fan base recognized that, and it was good to see. It was good to see that. If the Bruins booed them off the ice, which I don't think the fans would have done that, but it would have been distasteful. But they gave those players their just due, and I mean, it's not a fan base that goes easy on goalies. Aside from Tim Thomas, who had to win a Stanley Cup to get that affection.
Was there yesterday.
I mean, Tuukka Rask has he has the greatest numbers in the team's franchise's history of 100 years, but most Bruins fans aren't the biggest fans of Tuukka in clutch time, and here they are cheering Swayman off the ice. So it just says a lot about Swayman and his performance, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting when you look at this series compared to last year, because last year it was really your defense and goaltending that ultimately let you down in that series. Look at how high scoring some of those games were as that series went on. This series, you get the goaltending. You also got better defense as the series went on. I mean, even for all the time that the Panthers would still get in the Bruins zone at times, the Bruins took away high danger chances. Like, I said it after Game 5 that I thought Swayman was really good in that game, but I didn't think he had to stand on his head. He made some really good saves last night, but I also thought the Bruins did a pretty good job not allowing the Panthers to really test them with a ton of great chances. So that it makes the lack of offense kind of even more frustrating, because it's like, I know there's going to be people who pick on defense, and we can go individual by individual if we want. And it's fair to say, guys like McAvoy, Lindholm, you need them to contribute more offensively too. That's fair. But to me, this wasn't last year. As that series went on, they got so much worse at breaking pucks out and dealing with the Panthers' pressure. This year, as the series went on, I think they got better at that. I think that's why they got odd man rushes in games 4, 5, 6. Is that they started to deal with the pressure better, and they were making better first passes.
Well,
not to say that they're perfect. Obviously, there's plays we can point out here and there, but if you just have more offense, we look at this and go wow, look how many games of series they held the Panthers to 2 goals or less, and you'd say hey, good job by them, good job by Montgomery, figuring it out defensively and not having all those giveaways that they had last year. But your shortcomings were really at the other end of the ice. Last year they still averaged over 4 goals a game in that series, and this year it's that just all went away. You averaged 2 goals a game.
I mean, a lot of the players went away too. From a lot of their talented offensive players just weren't with the team this year, retired or traded, or missing Bergeron, Krejci, Hall, Bertuzzi. Those are big offensive threats that they didn't have this year. But there's at some points, some of those guys, not really Bergeron, but Bertuzzi was sometimes a defensive liability. But yeah, and the one goal they did have was by Pavel Zacha, who was his first goal of the playoffs. It was his first ever playoff goal through 25 games played, and it was a breakaway. So he was able to finish one, and that's what gave the Bruins a 1-0 lead pretty early. And that was an incredible pass by DeBrusk, just somehow found its way backwards. He looked over his shoulder, but it was almost like a no-look backhand pass that just was perfect to Zacha to score.
And it starts with great defense, with Brendan Carlo standing up Carter Verhaeghe in a zone entry and just stopping him dead in his tracks.
Yeah, and I don't know. I talked to Scott about this after the game a little bit, but Brian, you weren't part of this conversation. Brendan Carlo did not end up playing a lot to finish out the game. He ended up with at least I would say right around 8 minutes less ice time than he normally plays. Andrew Peak finished with more ice time than him. Carlo only played just over 15 minutes of time on ice. So usually, I mean, I can't remember the last time he wasn't up over 20. And he was getting skipped over on some shifts, and he was coming out less and less frequently in the third, but he was playing. But something wasn't right with that, because in a game that you're trying to close out, it's tied, you want your best defensive players out there as much as possible. And he's a guy that never gets, the bench never shortens to disclude Brendan Carlo on the defensive side. So something may be a little bit up, may have been up with his health. Obviously, nobody asked about this yet, but on breakup day, I'm sure I plan on asking if no one does, if there was anything going on with Carlo in that game. But that's one of the unfortunate situations that happened. It might date back to, he took a big hit by Cousins, almost looked like maybe was boarding along the end boards. Like I said, played, but not as frequently after that.
It's possible there's injury there. I don't know until we find out. But
when's the last time he played less than 20 minutes?
I don't know, but I can tell you guys this. I think that in a 1-1 game in the third period, when your season's on the line, I'll put it to you this way: the Panthers are an amazing forechecking team. Brendan Carlo doesn't make a lot of great first passes out of his zone. So he doesn't really do well under duress. And so I don't know if maybe he was hurt. Maybe it was a combination of that.
He didn't play the final 5 minutes at all. Didn't have a single shift.
Yeah.
Okay, then
he did play. He did play under 20 minutes a few games in this series, but I was gonna say, I feel
like he's under 20 quite a bit, but it's usually close.
Yeah, 15 was the fewest. And yeah, him not taking shifts at the end of the game, I don't know if that was, it just felt like maybe something was off about it, because he's the guy you would think you'd want to shut things down out there.
Yeah,
and the fact that Andrew Peak.
What game was it where he game 5 against Toronto too, right? He got hurt and he wasn't able to come out for overtime, and had there been a second overtime, he would have been good. What was that injury? That was back in round 1. So maybe some things are compiling on him, but it could be a variety of things. But I also don't think he's a great puck mover. So, I mean, there could have been some matchups there too. If he's not at his best, I don't think they want him out there just throwing the puck off the glass to Montour to keep in and get a puck on that. I mean, it's just not. I don't know.
Well, this is the time of year when we find out all of the injuries that people were trying to play through. And I mean, Jake DeBrusk talked about his injury after the game. He said he had a broken hand that didn't quite heal until the playoffs. So, I don't know. There's a lot. Last year it was Lindholm's foot. Came out that he told some of the Swedish media back when he was at home that he had a fractured foot, and that stuff all comes out this time of year.
Yeah, and exactly, and it's going to come out every year, right? It's always going to be a factor in every team out there. So a couple of things before we get into Scott's opening shift, which is forward looking, because I think Brendan Carlo is an interesting player to talk about as well going forward. You have the emergence of Mason Lohrei. You have Hampus Lindholm, who's a top 4D. Charlie McAvoy is a top 4D, obviously. And I think the Bruins might want to go out and spend. They're going to have a ton of cap space. So, maybe they go out and spend on a top 4D, and maybe with the emergence of Lohrei, maybe Carlo is somebody that they look to move. I don't know. I have to look at his contract, but we can play that game as we go along. A couple of final points here on the game. I mentioned before the playoffs started, the Bruins would have to be better at home ice, protecting home ice if they wanted to have success in the postseason. They were 2-5 on home ice in the playoffs this year, dating back to game 1 against St. Louis in 2019. And I cherry picked that series because they went 0-3. I'm sorry, they went 1-3 at home in that series. So since game 1 against St. Louis in 2019, the Bruins are 10-13 in 23 home games at TD Garden. So that excludes the Toronto bubble series against Hurricanes in Tampa. So this is a trend now, and their season keeps ending on home ice. And I don't know if there's anything to that, guys, because they've lost this. Yes, this current Bruins team had lesser talent than Florida. Okay, but the Bruins also had more talent than St. Louis. They had more talent than Florida last year, and they had more talent than the Islanders. They had more. So it kind of it's a bigger picture here, bigger sample size. What can you attribute to their lack of success on home ice? Is it parity in the league? I think it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think around the league, home ice in general doesn't matter nearly as much as it used to, and some of that is parity created by the salary cap. It's parity created by every rink essentially now being the same. None of them really having, any unique features or crowds overhanging or anything like that.
You mean the Bruins weird boards that doesn't count as a unique feature? That just shoots a puck out?
No, because that always hurts them. Like their opponents have figured out the weird bounces more than they have.
Yeah, Swayman had to make a stop on the boards the other day. It popped right out at his net, and he covered it with the glove, like he was expecting it.
Yeah, but so beyond just home ice in general not really seeming to matter, why? Because the Bruins have still, even with that established, the Bruins have still been significantly below 500 the last 2 years, especially. So, like, why can't they at least be 500 at home? I'm at a loss. Like, I don't have an explanation for it. I've heard Jim Montgomery and players asked about it, and they say, well, our crowd's great and we just have to do a better job. And we saw them, try to change things up by staying in a hotel, moving morning skates to the Garden from Warrior. Montgomery said that sometimes it's easier to overcome a mistake on the road or overcome a goal because you're just locked in and nothing's changed, and you don't, sometimes at home, like, you feel that energy come out of the building, and maybe that affects guys. But none of that's unique to the Bruins. Like, that's every team everywhere has that effect. So I don't have an intelligent answer. I don't even really have a guess at it. Obviously, you have to defend home ice. Like, you have to be better. You at least can't be 2-5 on home ice. Like,
yeah, it's the black seats, Scott. No more yellow seats. No more character in that building.
It's as good of an explanation as anything.
Yeah, there really isn't a good one. Like, if you look at the regular season record at home, it's good. Like, it's a decent record. 24-11 at home. Like, obviously you're not playing the best teams in the league every game, so that's why your stats look a little bit better in the regular season. But I don't think there's a real good answer either. And think about it. They lose their last home game of the season, and that's how they end up losing first place to Florida. So they don't end up finishing first in the Atlantic because they didn't finish strong at home in the regular season, and then they don't in the playoffs either.
And probably dodge a bullet in the first round with Tampa and draw Toronto, which I think favored the Bruins, as it turns out. So one final question for me to the panel before we talk about the offseason.
I will say, I still don't think Tampa was very good. Like, I think there's a reason why Florida steamrolled that team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying the Bruins couldn't have beat them. I'm just saying we know the Bruins did beat Toronto. And I mean, I don't know. I think that the biggest difference between Toronto and Tampa is that Tampa's top stars play the way you need to play in the postseason. Toronto's top stars don't, for the most part. Anyway, And let's also Toronto was injured. I think if they're fully healthy the whole series, you never know what happens. But regardless,
yeah, they played games without Nylander and Matthews. Like,
yeah,
they weren't they weren't fully healthy.
So I want to ask you guys this question. Now that the playoffs have come and gone, and they came and went with Jeremy Swayman being far and away not only the best player on the Bruins, but arguably the best player in the playoffs from start to finish of him being in the playoffs. If Allmark was around next year, which we don't think he would be, but conceptually, are you like no longer somebody who would want to do a goalie rotation in the playoffs? Like, did this year prove to you that goalie rotations probably just don't work? I know we didn't see it really, but what you did see
I was
was
gonna say we
didn't prove much.
I was gonna say, like, I'm my very last like one pinky toe to stand on. We can't say it didn't work because they didn't do it. So
okay,
yes, but what you did see was a goalie situation that couldn't have been any better. But a goalie rotation would not have been any better. It would not have been any better performance-wise than what you saw in this playoff series. And I think the reason you saw Jeremy Swayman play as well, partly why you saw him play as well as he did, was because mentally he knew game to game the net was his. Like, I think there's if the net flips, I don't even know if he plays as well as he does because you're breaking up his rhythm. But I guess I got your answer on that, so we can move on. But it was it was talked about the whole time.
Add, like, it's the best thing to come out of this postseason for the Bruins is they got to see how Jeremy Swayman does as a number one in the playoffs, and he excelled. And now going forward. So now you don't have to wonder going into these contract negotiations. Can he do it in the playoffs? Can he be a number one? Can he play 8-9 games in a row? He did it. Like, you don't have those questions. So, if there is no negative to it, obviously it's going to cost the Bruins more money now. But so, like, you want that. Like, you're happy. You should be happy to pay Jeremy Swayman more money because of what he did in this playoffs. Because if he didn't do it, or you weren't sure going forward, like, you would still have some questions. You'd be like, are we really going to lock into whatever 7 years, $7 million with Swayman when he hasn't really done in the playoffs? Like, you don't have that anymore.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I think the biggest difference of opinions for me and a lot of Bruins fans heading into the playoffs is, like, a lot of them wanted to see the playoff goalie rotation because we never saw it, and I wanted to see.
I want to say your tattoo didn't age well.
Well, I know I got to get that removed. But a lot of people wanted to see the goalie rotation first.
It's going to get split in half like Parent Trap, where they're going to have these photos to...
Yeah, and like Allmark wins one with another team and Swayman wins one with the Bruins, and then
for people who are just listening to the audio, this is a Photoshop that Bridget did of Allmark and Swayman holding up the Stanley Cup, getting ready to hug. So
yeah, because the goalie rotation got them all the way and they won. First team ever.
Mm-hmm.
Brian got that tattoo weeks ago.
Right. Which is tongue in cheek because I just never
he's
saw
gonna that. He's gonna be in that next NHL commercial with that Avalanche couple who broke up because they won the Stanley Cup the one year they weren't watching together or whatever.
But anyway, so I just wanted to see Swayman get the net for the playoffs before I saw the rotation. Like, we saw Allmark get an opportunity in a couple, we saw Allmark get an opportunity in a couple of years and he faltered, so he couldn't do it by himself. And I was okay seeing if the goalie rotation worked, but I needed to see if Swayman could do it by himself first. And then we should see if there's rotation. And then people were saying, well, that's what they're using in the regular season. And I was saying, guys, you're overstating that. Like, he's gonna be fine. He's not gonna suck because he's not used to playing every day in the playoffs. So
the one last thing, because you're probably right that some people thought the way. Like, the one last thing I'll say for myself, for me, it was never about anything I want to see because we haven't seen it before. It was what I thought gave them the best chance to win. And as it turned out, riding Swayman gave them the best chance to win. So like, I'll take the L on that. But I never want to see the goalie rotation just for funsies, like just because we hadn't seen it.
We'd have to roll the tape back. I thought you kind of said you wanted to see that, but
no, I wanted to see it because I thought it was their best chance to win. That's it. That's all it's about in the playoffs.
There are merits for sure to the argument because, you know, health reasons. Like, was he going to be fresh? He never looked tired to me. Like now that we're at the end of it and we can look back on it, like I don't think he got worn out or tired. Maybe that's lucky. Wmaybe that's, you know, he's a young goalie as well, so that probably helps him out, and he takes good care of himself. But yeah, there were definitely merits to it heading in, like workload wise. Nobody like throughout the last 2 seasons was used to as heavy a workload as Swayman got in the playoffs because they were used to the rotation for the regular season. But you know what, it keeps leading me back to ever since last night, just reflecting on what they were missing and what they have and what they were missing. They were missing a top 6 forward that you assume they tried to move Swayman for at the deadline. I mean, it's not Swayman, Ullmark for at the deadline, and they didn't get it, and they didn't end up really using or needing Ullmark in the playoffs. So like that move, if Don Sweeney would have been able to make it, could have been the difference in making it further. I don't know. But you think about who they didn't use, and you know, Ullmark's usage was not high enough to like you could have definitely justified a trade of him at the deadline to add to your forward group.
Well, I also think we don't. Yes, I mean we're kind of speculating, but I know a lot of individuals.
Well, I don't think they were trying to trade him for a defenseman.
Well, I was just gonna say no. I think.
I mean, they might have. We heard Matt Roy's name with the Kings, so
we don't know. We don't know what he would have gone for because you're not dealing from a position of strength in the middle of the season. He's like the time to move him was last summer after winning a Vezina. I said it till I was blue in the face, and I know many people might say, "Why would you do that?" Because anybody who's been watching Jeremy Swayman for the last 2 or 3 years, even when he's had times where he hasn't been playing the greatest, the kid is an absolute gamer. He says the right things. He's a competitor, and I just thought you should have. Despite Ullmark winning the Vezina, after that playoff performance, even though he was hurt, whatever, like we all knew while Linus Ullmark was accepting his Vezina trophy that Jeremy Swayman was the future of the Boston Bruins, or should be. And so I just thought they should have sold high. They didn't, and
but I think they tried to. Like,
sure, fine.
I mean, they listened to offers, and I think if they could have gotten a first-round pick, they would have. Like, and this is what it gets to for me is there was no chance in hell I was giving away Linus Ullmark after a Vezina season. Like, if the right deal was out there, absolutely. But
that's why I'm saying sell high. That's why I'm saying sell. Like,
yeah.
First of all, I just want to clarify.
Selling high if the best offer is a 3rd-round pick?
Well, yeah, but no, I'm
not selling high. That's settling. That's giving him away.
Yeah, but Scott, you're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say to settle to trade him for a 3rd-round pick or a 1st-round pick. when I say sell high, I'm saying like
that might have been all they were offering. That might have.
What I'm saying is, I don't think the sell high offer was out there. I don't think anyone was buying high.
So okay, that's fair. So if that's the case, then it is what it is. You can't do anything about it. So I don't know. I'm not a part of those GM talks, and maybe the deal wasn't there. Regardless, it wasn't the time to really. I think we were all in agreement here during the season. If you can move him for something that's worthwhile, do it. But again, because it wasn't a position of strength, they couldn't do it. Can they do it this offseason? How do you feel now?
Well, you feel like if they don't, they're going to have a whole lot of money tied up in the goaltending position because Ullmark makes $5 million, and I have to imagine Swayman's going to come in make more than that. His contract is going to probably be pretty big and long. So and Ullmark has 1 year left on his deal, right? So he would end up having, if you keep him and you don't trade him at this next upcoming trade deadline or this offseason, you lose him for nothing, right? So his value, he becomes somebody that if you traded him at this deadline, he'd be treated as a rental. Because he's this upcoming year is the last year of his contract. So do you try to move him before you get to that position this offseason?
Yes. I think he gets traded this summer. And I think the Bruins now will be more willing to settle and essentially take whatever's out there. Work around his no trade clause. Maybe he's more willing to waive it for more teams now that it's this right. Like, it's one thing to uproot mid-season. He has a family, he has kids in school here.
Mm-hmm.
It's another to do that over the summer when you can better plan. So maybe he's more willing to waive it for additional teams. But yeah, I imagine that's pretty high on Sweeney's to-do list, and I think it gets done. It's probably not going to be for a great return, but if you're the Bruins, I think you're in more of a position now where, you probably just take what you can get, run with it, and use that money elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of teams could use a really strong goalie.
Right. I mean, well, that's the thing. Like, you still might be in a position where you're not really giving him away because, to your point, like, yeah, the Kings are still looking for a goalie. The Devils are still looking for a goalie. Depending on whether you're willing in division, like Ottawa, Detroit are teams that, probably think they're not that far away. Well, maybe Ottawa does now. I don't know what they're thinking, but would need goalies. So, there's plenty of teams.
Edmonton always seems to be a goalie and a couple depth forwards away.
I know they thought they had it with Stu Skinner, and then he just totally fell apart this postseason. So
yeah. Okay, so that's all, Mark. If they can, they will. And who? So Bridget, you mentioned before the episode, who do we think may play their last game in Bruins uniform?
In Brian's favorite Centennial uniforms.
Hit the bricks. That is the best part of this season being over. I never have to watch those damn dull, gross ass glitter gold and black club hockey jerseys ever again on the Garden Ice. Okay, maybe it should be who should have played their last game in a Bruins uniform. Maybe that makes it more subjective to your guys' opinion. Are there any major shakeups, or is it just they have a ton of cap space, just support your core players? But like, are there any like Carlo, DeBrusk, some people like that have been a part of this core? Would you guys be willing to maybe explore moving them or not re-signing?
I want to start probably not with trades, but with free agents and decisions that need to be made to re-sign or let somebody walk. And I think the very obvious one first and foremost is Matt Grzelcyk. I don't think he will be.
That wouldn't have been the oh, you mean like obvious to move on from?
Yes, I don't think he'll be.
I thought you meant like the most interesting one, which would definitely be someone else.
I think this one is probably, our listeners are probably like, yes, I don't think we're going to see Matt Grzelcyk in a Bruins uniform next season. He never made it back in the lineup after losing his spot. I guess technically one time he did, but he didn't see ice time in the series against Florida. Don't think he's built for the playoffs, which if you're trying to build a team that goes further next year, that's what you need to be thinking about, obviously. And he's somebody that just gets bumped off pucks pretty easily, and he'll probably be able to go somewhere and get a, I don't know, middle or bottom pair job. But I don't think it's going to be in Boston unless he takes a really deep hometown discount because he is from here. So, I mean, that's the only potential of him staying here, I think. And then Derek Forbort also is at the end of his contract. I don't know if you guys think he maybe played his last game in a Bruins.
I was going to say, let's go one at a time. Yeah, Grzelcyk, I think, is definitely gone. he's also 30, going on 31 next season. So
I always forget he's that age because him and I went to
age
college
not in
at
his
the same
favor.
time.
Yeah, so I think he's got if you don't trust him in the playoffs and he's not going to play, by the end of it he was practicing as their 9th defenseman.
Yeah.
Writing's on the wall.
He'll be a great third pairing guy for the Blue Jackets.
You go take Peake's job.
Yeah, exactly. Forbert, I think I think he's probably gone too. I think he's, you got Wotherspoon, you got Peake. Peake is signed. I thought Peake was good. I mean, he was hurt for most of the playoffs, and he came back, and I just think it's not easy to step back into a series like that, and I like his game.
Yeah, and again,
in general, but I think that last game he was not at his best.
Yeah, I thought both Peake and Wotherspoon struggled in Game 6, but ultimately I like they're both signed, and I like both of them next season. Whether that's your third pair, which I'd be totally fine with, or one of them's your 7th defenseman, or there's rotation, whatever, that's fine. Either way, I don't need to re-sign Forbert. Again, he's 32, so he's up there in years as well. Obviously, he's battled a lot of injuries. So I don't really see a fit. I don't.
Yeah, I think the fact that he's had so many injuries makes it easier to move on from him, just because they've been dealing with him not being available for quite a bit in his time with Boston. But they do love him as a penalty killer. We know that they have this value in forward that's a little bit different than our analysis of him. And Razor's very high on him too, so I'll be interested to see Razor's final thoughts on Sunday about Forbert when we talk to him. But I think those two are probably, we probably did see them play in their last games of Bruin, and neither of them played in Game 6, so their last games as Bruin actually came a while ago. And then another defenseman that found his way on the outside of things by the end of the playoffs was Kevin Shattenkirk, who had been mixed in earlier in the playoffs to try to help with the power play. But it kind of became clear that the Bruins power play, no matter what you seem to tinker with, just there was so much wrong with it that it wasn't fixed just by Kevin Shattenkirk alone, though he did do a pretty good job up there. He was only here on a 1-year deal. He's a veteran in the league. Is he someone that the Bruins want to run it back with, see what he can be another year? Or do you think he's somebody who doesn't want to deal with just being a 7th defenseman? Like, does he just want to go find an opportunity where he thinks he has a better chance to play?
I think he was signed to help fill a void of leadership that left last year with Bergeron, Krejci, and others. And I don't know if the Bruins need that next year. I think he was part of the money ball. Let's try to find some players that can fill a roster. And I think Shattenkirk will just go somewhere. I don't see the Bruins necessarily re-signing him. So, I mean, Scott, I don't have a strong opinion. I don't think he'll be here. I don't think the Bruins will keep him. I don't think Shattenkirk really cares. He's kind of like in the twilight years of his career. So maybe he wants to go somewhere that's warm, back to Tampa or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's leadership value, and if you're your 8th defenseman, I don't think there's much harm in that. But Bridgie kind of nailed it. Like, the area where he helped best was on the power play, and you're only helping the power play if you're playing every game, and he wouldn't be. So it's hard for me to really see him being back. I think he liked it here. Obviously played at BU in college, and I talked to him a couple times this season about just like reconnecting with the city, and he kind of fell in love with Boston again. But yeah, ultimately, like, you got to have a role, and I don't really think he would have one next year.
Yeah, that'd be 2 fewer Terriers for Scott to bro out with.
It's tough. It's getting lean around here.
Yeah, him and Shattenkirk, they'd just be talking BU hockey. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure you had an interview with Grzelcyk about it earlier too. But no, that's tough for.
By the way, since that reminded me, Brian, I asked McAvoy about that World Junior goal and that you brought up on the last podcast and tweeted out. And he said he knew it right away that it was identical. And he said he texted Jordan Greenway after the game, who was teammates with them at BU and on that World Junior team. So
Really?
yeah, you guys on the same page on that.
Yeah, wow. Did you Brian, did you text McAvoy right after that? Or did he text you?
No, he Facebooked me. But Scott, did you give me credit, or did you sit there and say, "So Charlie, I noticed"?
No, I gave you credit.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, it was uncanny, right? Absolutely identical.
Yeah.
Even like down to the way he celebrated.
Yep.
And yeah,
and the exact same amount of contact in the same spot with the goalie, like on the top of the crease, and
yeah, same amount of. I mean, you could sit there and say players score the same goal before, like Ovechkin has what? How many hundreds of one-timers? But it was different though. It's like it was the way the play shaped up. It was just like I couldn't. It was crazy. But that is funny, Scott, that he picked up on that right away. I mean, it's a huge goal for him. The gold medal game goal. I mean, I'm surprised. I'm not surprised he remembered it. Who's next on the list, guys?
So we're probably not going to get to everyone today because there's quite a few free agents, but
yeah,
and we have plenty of time in the off season to go through. But if we wanted,
I was gonna say let's get to the biggest one, Jake DeBrusk.
Yeah,
what do you think happens?
Well, he had the most points for the Bruins in the playoffs. He had an inconsistent season, but I never felt like his effort was lacking. I felt like he was doing the right things the whole year. Apparently, he was dealing with a hand injury for quite a while, and maybe that had something to do with some of the slumps that he went through. He ended up playing 80 of 82 games, so he finished out the season playing most of the year. He is somebody that, I mean, you're not looking to detract from your top six forwards, are you? Like, are you? I think he's somebody that seems like he wants to stay. Obviously, when we talk about free agents, it's part of it's on him, not just what the Bruins want to do. And you know, does he want to stick around? And I think he likes his team. And I think, whereas back before under Bruce Cassidy, he was asking for a trade. I don't think that exists in him anymore, that he, you know, wants out. I think he would like to stay, but he ended up being your best player production wise. You know, not talking about Swayman, like taking him out of the equation, but in terms of point production and goals, he was your best player, and he was making things happen. And I know throughout the regular season, like I said, he wasn't so consistent. Maybe that helps you get a reasonable deal for him, but I don't see why you wouldn't try to offer him something fair to bring him back.
Scott, do you want to go first?
Sure. So for me with DeBrusk, essentially what it comes down to is, you know, what do you have budgeted for that spot? And I mean top six winger. Because I think we all agree the priority should be finding a number one center. So is that Elias Lindholm, who's the top free agent? Is that someone via trade, which you don't have a ton of assets to pull off? Like, so how are you getting your center, and what are they costing you? And then what's left? Because if it's $6 million left, I don't know that you're finding a better use of $6 million than Jake DeBrusk. Like, if that's what he's going to come in at, you know, look around at like free agents. Once you get past the top couple wingers, it gets pretty thin. So, you know, are you going to be able to find someone for that kind of money? For all the issues with DeBrusk's inconsistency, he's been just shy of a point per game player in the playoffs for 2 years running now. And as you said, he was your top scorer this postseason. So if we're talking about, you know, you need more offense in the playoffs, like, he's one guy who actually has brought it. So I am not at all opposed to keeping DeBrusk. I guess what I'm wondering is, are you going to have money to upgrade from DeBrusk? Like, can you add at center and also have money to go after one of the true big fish in free agency like Sam Reinhart or Jake Gensel. Because if you do, I'd rather have one of those guys than Jake DeBrusk. And you're definitely not signing both, right? Like, but if you don't have the money to go after a Reinhart or Gensel, there's not going to be a whole lot of better options than DeBrusk in that next level down. So that's kind of what it comes down to for me, and that's largely just going to depend on what other moves you make this offseason and where your money goes.
Yeah, I mean, all good points, guys. I really am kind of indifferent on him for all the reasons you guys have mentioned. Heading into the postseason, I was done with them. Absolutely done with them. It has nothing. It's no vendetta. It's just a matter of he's not producing at the level that they need him to produce at in the regular season. In his career, he's averaging 0.57 points per game in the regular season. Now, Scott mentions he's almost a point per game guy in the playoffs the last couple of years. His career postseason numbers, I think he's just over half a point per game as well. I thought he was good. I thought he was really good in the postseason this year. The effort was evident. He was blocking shots. He was finishing checks. He was, making some things happen out there offensively. So if you're going to get that effort from him in the postseason and you're planning on being a postseason team, then if the number's right, sure. I just don't know if he's a bona fide top 6 guy. I just don't know if he is. And I wonder if he's better suited on a third line role. And I don't know if Jake DeBrusk wants to play a third line role in Boston when he can play a top 6 role, probably somewhere else, a lesser market that's less of a circus media wise. I just don't know. I really don't know what the Bruins should do. I don't know if it's just better to just kind of move on for both parties and just try to reestablish your middle 6. I know he's played on what do you want to call the top line last year? Was it Bergeron, Marchand, DeBrusk, or was it Pastrnak, Krejci, Zacha? Depending on who he's playing with, could he play on a first line? Sure. Could he play on a second line? Sure. Could he play on a third line? Yeah. But a 40-point guy, like I said, half a point per game guy in his career in a regular season, he's not somebody that really you should be losing too much sleep over if you part with him. At the same time, if Jake DeBrusk gives you that playoff effort every year in the playoffs, he's not hurting your team. It's just a matter of, to Scott's point, cap allocation.
And there's a few guys, Brian, that were playing in the top 6 this year at different points that you probably would say were better suited for a third line role. I mean, Morgan Geekie, always playing in the top 6 in the playoffs, who did a great job, by the way. I'm not saying that, but like he comes to Boston after being I think he was a 4th liner, and then he comes in and he works his way up and into more minutes and in better positions. And I think he was able to prove to the league that he was better than what teams had given him credit for. So good for him on that. Dan Heinen as well had a great season, but I don't know if he's someone you think you're going to have in your top 6 for a good chunk of the second half of the season, playing on a line with David Pastrnak. So the problem with all of that is if you take DeBrusk out of that equation, then you're with even fewer guys that you would say are definitely top 6 players. I mean, you're looking at Marchand and Pastrnak as your 2 definites. And then other than that, like Zacha finished out the series playing on the third line. Coyle was a third liner for a long time last year. He played mostly in the top 6 this year. Depends what you do at center. If he stays in there, there's just so much up in the air with the top 6 that having DeBrusk leave the equation just feels like it makes things more complicated.
Yeah, and most importantly, not only is some other team going to give him a chance to play in the top 6, but they're going to pay him like it coming off this playoff run.
Right.
So if the Bruins feel like you do, where they're like, maybe he's more of a third liner, then he's gone. Like, then you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
So
And give somebody like maybe Fabian Lysell a chance to be a third liner at some point. If he, I mean, I don't.
Personally, for me, like, if you go out, let's say it is Elias Lindholm, and so now you have, Pasternak, Lindholm, Marchand, maybe Zach on the wing, Coyle, DeBrusk, I guess your top 6. You're still probably hoping for maybe one more upgrade, but I have no problem with Jake DeBrusk as my 5th or 6th forward. Like, I think he slots in there fine on a really good team.
I think so too. I think he's a top 6 guy wherever he goes.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm not saying he's. When I say I don't know if he's a bona fide top 6 guy, that's exactly what I mean. Like, I don't think he's a sure thing top 6. I think he can be top 6. I think he's fringe. I think he's a fringe second, third liner. Like, I think he's a really good third liner, and I think he's a lower tier top 6 forward. And I think his point production backs that up. So for me, it comes down to how much is he going to cost? If he's going to demand, too much money, then I don't need him in my top 6. Like, you could, hell, I mean, Danton Heinen came in on a PTO and was playing with Pasternak and Zacha, and like, I'm just saying, like, you don't got to bend the knee to Jake DeBrusk if he wants too much money. And
and they're not going to. They're not
right.
going to overpay for him. There's, I just think that they should. I think my point is, I think that they should extend him a fair offer.
Yeah.
And there's a chance somebody outbids them, but like, it's not like they're not going to offer Jake anything. I don't think they're just going to be like, sorry, man, we don't want you. Like, I don't think that's what's going to happen this offseason. I think that there's a number that they're comfortable with, that they're going to offer, and see if he accepts it.
I think we're all singing the same song here. I'm with you guys.
Yeah. And I'll also say too, like, not like, I get what you're saying, Brian, like, you move Heinen. I'll also say, not that Heinen would be like the 1-for-1. It's not like you let Jake DeBrusk go like, I guess we'll turn around and sign Danton Heinen.
No, right. And I'm not
either. But, would point out, like, Heinen had 1 point in 8 playoff games. To what I said earlier about, like, water finding its level, Danton Heinen is not someone who's going to step up and be one of your top offensive guys in the playoffs. No. Like, he's just not capable of that. Jake DeBrusk can do that, and we saw that. So, like, that's also the difference between, okay, like, fine, maybe they put up roughly similar numbers in the playoffs, but you know what a player who can be, a difference maker in the playoffs looks like, and one who's not. And Jake DeBrusk, however maddening some of his inconsistencies can be, can make a difference in the playoffs.
Yeah. And obviously I'm not advocating for them to just let DeBrusk walk and play Moneyball. I want them spending all this cap space, for sure. It's very simple for me. I'm just not overpaying for him. That's all. I want to ask you guys one player though. And I said it earlier, with the emergence of Mason Lohrei, you have Lindholm, you have McAvoy, and you have Carlo right now. But if the Bruins decide to go spend on a top 4 D-man, does that make Brandon Carlo's future a little uncertain with the Bruins in a top 4 role? Maybe maybe he's a great third line pair guy, maybe. But he has 3 years left in his deal. It's a modified no trade clause, I believe. So it wouldn't be easy, but is there a world where the Bruins explore maybe upgrading their top 4D and Brandon Carlo might be a casualty because of it with the emergence of Mason Lohrei? Or if they do upgrade a top 4D man, would Carlo potentially be a third pair guy at this point in his career? Because he's not old, but I mean, don't look now, but Carlo's been a Boston Bruin for almost a decade. So, and how do you think he is 3 years from now? We know he's dealt with injury issues. So is he somebody that the Bruins might try to move on from while he's still valuable to both the Bruins, but also somebody else, while they might try to shake up their look on the blue line?
I personally think he was one of their best players this playoffs. I am very high on Brandon Carlo as a defenseman. I'm excited by the idea of a future where Mason Lohrei is maybe playing with Brendan Carlo or playing in the top four. Those two are both playing in top four of the Bruins defense. I think that's a solid four. Lohrei still has plenty of growth in his game to develop, but McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, Lohrei, I like those four as your top four. And I don't know what you're getting as like, because I don't think Mason Lohrei and him are actually very similar, but despite their size, I don't think they play the game at all the same way. So I don't think it's like a 1-for-1 replacement there. Like Lohrei comes up and that means like Carlo's expendable. I think Carlo does something different than anyone else on this Bruins team. He is their shutdown guy. And he's such a great penalty killer. I don't know. I wouldn't think that would be a priority for them this offseason. Yeah, I think they like him a lot, but you're right. If they want to shake up, if they want to do something different on defense, maybe add a defenseman that can score more, put up more points. Depends what they're looking for. If you're saying like go after a top pair defenseman.
Right. Well, so just to be clear, as the Bruins currently stand, he's absolutely a top four defenseman for this Bruins team. And you're right, Bridget. He plays nothing like Lohrei, and I'm not comparing the two. I guess what I'm asking is, and Bridget, it seems like your answer is no, they shouldn't go out and add somebody. But Scott,
no, not that they shouldn't go out and add somebody, but that if they do, I wouldn't put Carlo in the deal.
Yeah, what I would say is,
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. If they add a top four guy, and like, where does that leave Carlo? Because Lindholm and McAvoy aren't leaving the top four, and we think Lohrei would be a top four guy.
I feel
so,
like
how does that affect him?
I don't know. Lohrei could be a third pair guy to start. He's still a rookie. They moved him around quite a bit with all sorts of different partners. So I don't know. I wouldn't move Carlo.
I guess what I would say is, so my opening shift, I said Don Sweeney's priorities are lock up Swayman and add offensively. There's a reason I did not list anything about the defense as a priority, because I don't think it is. I'm open to anything. Like, if there's a player out there you identify that you really want, okay, fine. Like, go make a run and then figure out how you sort it out, right? Brandon Montour is a free agent. We've seen the damage he's done against the Bruins. He could certainly help your power play. I think, the Bruins adding some sort of difference maker who helps the power play, I think, is a necessity. That could be a forward. The guys I mentioned, Reinhart, Lindholm, like, they both play the bumper on the power play, which I think was a weak spot of the Bruins this year.
Absolutely. And Reinhart had the most power play goals in the whole league this regular season.
Yeah. So, like, if they identified that, if they really want to change the look and say, like, Montour in, Carlo out because we're getting more offensive on the blue line, I think there's some logic there. Like, I'm open to it. But to Bridget's point, McAvoy, Carlo, Lindholm, Lohrei, I don't have any problem with that as my top four. Witherspoon, Peak, and add third pairing level defender X, whether you think you have that in your system or you're going out and signing someone for $1.5 million or something like that. Like, that looks like a decor that I like. I don't think, again, I said it earlier, like, I don't think that was the Bruins issue. You look at like chances allowed, high danger chances allowed. I mean, they were near the top of the NHL in the playoffs. They weren't giving them up. So, that's the number one job is like, don't give up goals, don't give up chances. And this Bruins, I know I'm going to be fighting like upstream on this because I know how Bruins fans work, and I know most of them hate Hampus Lindholm and Brandon Carlo, and are even down on Charlie McAvoy right now. Moving forward, I'm not. Defense to me is kind of the well, I wouldn't say least of the problems, but least of the areas to focus on this offseason.
It's pretty clear they need more goal scoring first and foremost, and the most effective way to do, especially on the power play. Like this power play, like we didn't even mention that as one of the reasons why they lost the series. Like earlier in today's episode, we've talked about it a bunch over the course of the postseason, but like it's a huge reason why they lost to Florida. They couldn't freaking score on the power play. So like
they got off to a great start in Game 6. They're out shooting the Panthers 4-0 4 minutes in. They get a power play and it totally kills their momentum.
Yeah,
they went 14 minutes without a shot after
they
that.
They also killed a penalty at the end of the third period with 20 seconds left in the PK. Beecher gets tripped, ton of momentum, crowd's going crazy, and again another dud of a power play. So I'm not posing these questions and these hypotheticals because I'm coming at a certain player. I'm just trying to look at all angles here. I think, when you look back at this Bruins team the last handful of years, they lost in the first round to the Hurricanes. They lost in the first round to the Panthers. They narrowly escaped losing in the first round this year to the Maple Leafs because you left it down to one shot. And then they lose to the Panthers in Game 6 in the second round. My point is, we're not talking about a team that goes to the conference finals every year. We're also not talking about a team that doesn't make the playoffs. I'm just saying, I think whenever you don't achieve your goal, right? And I know this Bruins roster was limited this year, so you have to recalibrate. But I'm just saying, over the last couple of years, because last year they had a phenomenal roster, this Bruins team they haven't been to the conference finals since 2019. There's a lot of teams that haven't been to the conference finals in decades. So I know, I'm just saying, when you don't accomplish the goals you set out to accomplish over a handful of years with a lot of the same players, right? A lot of the same core, I think you just have to take a look at everybody and ask, can we upgrade the team here? We know we're good in this area. It might not be the problem. It might not be the biggest reason we lost. Could it still be better? And I think that when the Bruins signed Hampus Lindholm, and you had Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy in your top four, I never thought that transitioning the puck would be an issue. Mason Lohrei comes in. When you have Mason Lohrei, Charlie McAvoy, and Hampus Lindholm in your top four, as you're saying, Scott, transporting the puck and transitioning should not be an issue. So I'm with you. It's not a huge glaring need, but it still wasn't very crisp. Like I felt like the Panthers' top guys like Montour and certainly Forsling and Ekblad, like they were just they were moving the puck with conviction, and I just felt like the Bruins weren't doing that entirely in the second round. I know it was the furthest thing from their biggest problems. The goaltending was great. It was the lack of scoring. I just wonder, is there somewhere that they can improve that's where good is not always good enough? That's all. I think you have to look at all areas, and I think we are. It's just the conversation we're having.
Yeah. And we have plenty of time in the off season to continue some deeper dives too, like some comps and some trade options, like, actually look at it, put it down on paper, see if we like it, see if we don't like it, kind of stuff that we have to, we have an off season to mull things over for next year. Unfortunately, I don't usually know what to do with myself during hockey off season. So who knows? Like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do because my hockey season is go, go, go. And then all of a sudden it ends and I'm sitting, in my kitchen painting stuff. Like, I don't even know. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, but especially when you work covering hockey, and that's mainly my, that's my main job. I don't have a whole lot to do in the off season. So yeah, we'll be thinking about this. We'll be doing some deeper dives.
All right. Well, Scott, anything left for you? Bridget, I think we'll probably get to wrap this up pretty soon, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, just want to end with the thank you to all the listeners all season long. A lot more, we're not going anywhere. We're still going to be doing episodes every week. Ideally 3 times a week, but maybe a little less here and there. Obviously, there's not always a ton of off-season content, but there's a breakup day coming up to react to. There'll be end-of-season press conferences with Sweeney, Neely, Montgomery, so we'll have reaction to all that. Next, free agency rumors and all that stuff's going to start sooner than you realize. So plenty plenty of stuff to cover, and we'll continue to be here for it. But definitely thank you to everyone who listened all season.
Yeah, and obviously the playoffs are still going on, so there's still going to be stories that come out of that. Rangers, Florida be a really interesting series to watch. And also before we sign off, I just want to say we do have one last Sunday skate this upcoming Sunday morning. It's an hour longer, so it's 9 to noon with me, Scott, and Razor. So tune into that because I'm very interested to hear what Razor has to say about a few things. And yeah, just keep looking for our episodes because we're not going to stop during the summer. We're going to keep putting things out.
Yeah, and we have the draft in June. Maybe the Bruins find some way to get a first-round pick. I don't think so, but you never know.
Maybe they at least find somehow to get something better than a 4th-round pick, which right now is their first pick. Like I gotta even I can't really talk myself into getting super excited for 4th rounders, but a lot of time between now and then, so maybe I'll get there.
Was Marchand a 3rd rounder?
He was 3rd, yeah. He was 3rd, I think, right?
So you never know. But okay, yeah, definitely lots to talk about in the offseason until October. So for the last time, this Bruins regular and postseason, thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you soon. Hey guys, thanks for watching this Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.